Okay, we have a lot of people logged in, so I'm going to go ahead and jump in and kind of get started.
Okay.
So I'll do a little introduction for Lyman and then we'll let him run with it. So thanks for everybody for attending today. My name's Scott Douglas. I'm the director of the Hahn Horticulture Garden here in Blacksburg, Virginia. We're super excited that we've added 3 of Lyman's sculptures to the garden, to our conifer beds. So we hope everybody will come check them out. There's a few Zoom related things I wanted to cover beforehand. Some people have less than reliable internet connection, so I'm going to ask everybody to make sure, just go ahead and turn off your video and make sure you're muted. You can do those with the control buttons at the bottom left of your screen. For best viewing, if you click on view up at the top right corner, you should be able to select speaker view, so that'll highlight whoever's speaking at the time. And if you have questions, so we're going to save questions for the end, but you can go ahead and write those questions in the chat box and I'll read through those questions at the end and we'll try and get them to answer as many as possible. So the other thing I'd like to say before we start talking is I want to thank Warren and Margie Kark. They're garden supporters who are the people who purchased and donated these sculptures to the garden. So we're very appreciative for the Karks and their continual support of the garden and for them donating these pieces to the garden. So with that, today's guest is Lyman Whitaker. He's a very talented sculptor from Utah. He's been creating these wind sculptures since the mid-'80s. Pieces have been installed in public and private gardens throughout the country, including Missouri Botanical Gardens and the Dallas Arboretum. He also has an international reach. He's got pieces in Australia, Dubai, Europe, Japan. So we're really excited that now the Hahn Horticulture Garden is on that list of places where his art is displayed. So with that, I'll say good morning to Lyman and we'll give you the floor. Thank you very much for doing this.
Well, thank you for all being here. I'm at my home in Springdale, Utah, at the mouth of Zion's National Park. This morning, as I was having tea, there's a figure I did years and years ago, and the sun caught it just right as it was coming up. And I looked at it and I thought, gee, that's really a lovely piece. But normally when I gaze at this piece, I look at all the things I could have done better. But this morning, it looked like I sort of was able to explore all the things I did right with the piece. That also made me reflect on my path to being an artist. Some people know what they're going to do from the time they're born, but I just kind of stumbled into it somewhere after high school. The pandemic has offered a little bit of a silver lining for me. I appreciate the tremendous suffering that has visited on a lot of people, but that shouldn't prevent me from seeing some of the positive aspects of it. And I think the really big one is it's allowed me to slow down. And I think the culture at large has been forced to drop its pace from this frantic, insane pace that we're all caught up in, except possibly those of us who are retired. I'm only semi-retired. Let's see. So, it allows a chance to be a little more pensive, a little more pondering. It gives you a little time to mull things over before you take a decision. And this is moving more slowly has been kind of an intrinsic part of my creative process. I've always, this may sound funny, but I've always thought slow. And it was quite a problem because when you're slow, people, they think you're slow, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not intelligent. In fact, thinking slow often allows you more space to explore what's going on. I doubt Einstein came up with the theory of relativity by thinking fast. I think it was a slow process. So at any rate, that has been a positive aspect for me. The other morning, I was on a walk, and in my usual trudging along with my mind racing, and I stopped at a moment and thought, just looked around and took a few deep breaths and noticed the sky and the trees and the path and a few noises and the breeze on my face. And I thought, gee, how wonderful it is to be in the present, to be a moment, and to be where I am instead of where I'm going. Let's see, my trajectory in life was towards in my early years. I was a different sort of child. I fit in and had friends, but I always felt a little at odds with the mainstream culture. I developed this idea that if things, let's see, this idea of if things, excuse me, sometimes I get tongue-tied, but don't worry about it. I came to think that if everyone is doing something, I should look elsewhere. This trait propelled me into alternative themes and new ways of being and seeing. I developed a wandering style rather than going in a straight line to my goals. I somewhat zigzagged. Nature is where I like to wander. The plant kingdom is where I enjoy spending my time. It's there among the expression of plants and animals that I developed my vocabulary of shapes, forms, and movements. And they later found their way into my work. This vocabulary came into full expression with the wind sculptures. You know, the elegant forms that leaves and their shapes have, they lend themselves easily to being replicated in copper. Rotating shapes, when you take these copper elements and put them around the shaft, they tend to create their own shapes and forms, you know, as they rotate. Here's a little short video that we could look at. It's the influence of plants on my work. So I guess, Scott, if you can bring that up.
My name is Lyman Whitaker, and I'm a wind sculpture artist. I get a lot of my ideas from plants and forms. Sometimes I'll walk around and, I'll pick up a weed, and it'll have some indications of which direction I should go. So I often do cutouts out of paper and then move into the metals. And that involves forging, pounding, punching, connecting. I love the process of making a machine turn and do something. And then embedded in that is the artistic element. And with some luck, you end up with a nice piece. And if you don't, failure often takes you into a new work, because it stops you from going where you go and forces you to go another direction. I like my artwork to blend in. I don't necessarily think it has to be the most upfront thing that you see. It's more something you can discover. That's one thing about the wind sculptures is they're quiet and they evoke peace and calm. Arboretums and botanical gardens are the ideal home for my work. I find that the work is the most comfortable in this setting. The work comes from plants, and to return to a environment where plants are the focus. The work just seems to be at home. What I like people to take away from the work is whatever they take away. It's a personal thing.
Well, I hope that showed some of the influence of plants on my work. In composing a new wind sculpture, I consider the wind to be a sculptural medium. It's an invisible force. It's found everywhere. And the great part is it's a free source of energy. I used to do some fountains, and you have pumps, and there's always, it never felt quite as natural, unless of course you could do a fountain out of a flowing stream, but they have flowing streams everywhere. So wind has been a really convenient medium for me to do some kinetic work. When I compose a piece, I feel like I have some partners. I have the tools I use, which form the metal or the materials, and those two work together and determine a lot of how the limits, certainly, of the shapes and forms. And the wind, of course, informs the shapes that will work and make the piece move. And so, with a little luck, the three of us come up with the spirit of the wind. And the wind is kind of an interesting thing, as I don't know how much you think about the air movement, but you can feel a gentle breeze on your face, and it moves to furiously destructive forces. Its most visual expression is easily seen in the movement of leaves, the quaking of leaves, and the movement of branches, the sway of tall grass, and occasionally it overturns a truck, and can get even more violent than that. And let's see, that is one reason that in designing the pieces, you have to have them to be able to withstand these forces, because you want the piece to be able to display itself in a whisper of a wind, and yet certainly don't want it to fall apart in extreme winds. I've received a little mail from some people who had the wind sculptures that survived Katrina and Sandy. There was a Florida woman called me once, and she said she had to evacuate, I think it was Naples, Florida, because there was a hurricane coming. And when she came back, her wind sculpture was still turning, welcoming her home. So she was pleased about that. A question often asked is how I find inspiration. And it doesn't generally come in a flash, so that's wonderful when it does. But it's a process that happens over time. I liken it more to planting a seed and watching the sprouts come up and letting it grow into a plant that often flowers. And I guess that's another analogy. Sometimes the flower, sometimes things after a history do burst forth in a little bit of a brilliant light of inspiration. But generally, you need a lot of support in the process for that to happen. The wind sculptures, in a funny way, I think that ran over, well, a decade or more like a half century from the first time I had some little inklings of where I might go with my artistic career. Mostly it went from complexity to simplicity is how I was finally able to do what I did. I had couple of people along the way that wanted, offered a commission for a wind piece. But at the time, I thought I had to get way too clever and way too complicated. My first understanding of the path that I might take in becoming an artist was after high school. I had a job working on a mountaintop for a transmitter for a TV station. And we were digging a trench. I guess I was, 16, 17, 18, however old you are when you graduate from high school. But we were digging this trench, and I found a piece of soft sandstone, soft when it's damp. It's kind of head shaped, kind of roundish. And so I thought it might be funny to play a joke on the guy I was working with. And when he went to lunch, I skipped lunch and carved a face. I grabbed a few tools from the shop and carved a few eyes and a nose and a mouth. And then I buried it back in the trench. And when we went back to work, I made sure he was ahead of me. And he dug this up and was really excited. He thought he'd found an artifact. And later that year, when I went to college, I had noticed in the catalog that they had a sculpture class, and I thought that was really a lot of fun carving that piece. So I took a sculpture class, and then I took another one. And let's see, I have a piece here that was, I think from the first, or I think this was from the second one, but it was, I did, can you see that? I can't see.
You have to pull it up a little.
Oh, how's that? But yeah, this was a bust I did of the prettiest girl in high school. And that sculpture tended to work out for me in a number of ways. One, it was really exciting for me to realize you could use your hands and that school could be fun for the first time. It also gave me enabled me to keep my grade point up, and that was something that was needed at that time in my life. Being a little bit of a slow thinker, I never fit into the educational system very well. And then I noticed that they also had a pottery department, and I thought, wow, another place where I can have fun. And so I did, I guess a year or so, I kept taking pottery classes, and that's where I first somewhat discovered it seems obvious now, but the relationship between line and form, like, you get an onion shape or leaves have a nice curve to them. And I found that creeping into my work. So I did, I think, a quarter to maybe 2 years of school. And then the 60s came along. And so I decided to take a gap year, which really turned into more of a gap decade, and maybe even a little more. During that time, I was able to travel. I took a trip to Europe, and it was really fun to see all the European masters, particularly since I had a classical training in sculpture. That was really exciting. But what was even more exciting was the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And that gave me the idea that, wow, you have a big latitude in art. You can really do almost anything. And if it's well composed and evokes some kind of feeling that, that you can consider it art. Let's see, I also took a trip around the world at that point. And then after period of time. I think it was after I had a trip to I worked in Antarctica for a while. And after I got back, and my sister who lived in New York was out, and we were talking. She said, you know, Lyman, I think you're a little adrift. I think that it would be really good for you to go back to college. And so she went to the University of Utah and got my transcripts and kind of calculated what I needed to do to get re-enrolled. And we decided on the easiest way through college for me is to take a degree in art. And so it was a really wonderful gift that my sister gave me. I'm really thankful for that. And in that period of time, by this time, the original guy I was under was Avard Fairbanks back in the early time. And he was a real classical monumental sculptor. But now there was a Italian, Angelo Caravaggio, which was head of the department, and he was a more contemporary sculptor, which really fit where I was going much better. During that time, I made a piece that really, it was really like one of my early wind sculptures. I had a base, and I had a squirrel cage fan which blows up a column of air, and along the I pounded out forms out of copper and then arranged them. And this is something, it's just a piece I've had, but it was something like this, and they caught, you know, the column of air caught them. I had them arranged around, and it was quite a lovely piece. During the critique, it was just sitting there, and Angelo said, well, that's really an interesting piece, but what does it do? And one of the students said, plug it in. And so it was an enjoyable moment for me. It was, but I didn't do anything. That another decade passed or so, and it was in the early 80s that we'd moved back to southern Utah to take care of my aging parents. And I had a studio at that point and was, doing artwork. And one thing I realized early on is that how you make your money is how you spend your time. And I realized that if I wanted to do artwork, I had to connect it to money, because otherwise I would not have any time to do it. So I was always kind of focused on that. But one day I thought, I'm tired of focusing on that aspect of art. I thought, I just want to do something in my studio that's fun. So I took a little vertical shaft and mounted some little ball bearings on it and some little arms around it. Then I pounded out some little copper shapes and made a little composition of shapes, and the thing turned nicely. I didn't think too much of it. It was just something fun that I wanted to do. I set it outside, and when I walked by it was pleasing to look at. It seemed to be turning, and it behaved well for a year. Back then, I used to gather a few artists around. There weren't many of us, and we'd send out a few invitations and have an art show. Somebody came by. I put this piece in the show just because, it seemed like the thing to do. And I didn't think that it would sell. I put a price of $80 on it. It was kind of a small piece, and it sold right away. And I thought, well, that was interesting. And then my father-in-law, he said, oh, I really like that little piece. I said, well, I'll make another one. And since I'd enjoy making that, I thought, well, I'll make two. So I made one for him, and then I made one for friend of mine's gallery. In fact, he was a person I met in college in pottery class, and he had a gallery in Springdale. And I put this piece in his gallery, and as I was setting it up, someone came by and bought it. And I thought, wow, this is a good sign. And that kind of started me down a path. So I've been really actively creating wood sculptures ever since. I sold that and made another one, and pretty soon I was actually making a living, which was really timely because my wife got pregnant with our first daughter. It was actually a planned pregnancy, and that allowed me to, or I should say that allowed her to quit her job when she had the child. And by that time I was making enough to, carry the burden of a family. And that was a most satisfying period of my life. Another significant step in my career was my brother had been working at Johnson Island, which was an atoll in the South Pacific. And the company he worked for, Holmes and Arbor, had been taken over by Raytheon. So his job was curtailed, and he came out and he was kind of looking around for another job. And while he was doing that, we started fooling around with some ways to make this putting wind sculptures a little easier to put together. He was a really brilliant with tools, and he'd been in the world of computers for 10 years and was really anxious to get his hands working again. And so we eventually, I decided I was selling enough and having trouble making enough to, the sales were outrunning my ability to produce. And so I took him on and, as a partner, and my wife entered the partnership. She had a degree in arts administration. And so between the three of us, we formed a really strong partnership. It was a triangle that had a real strength to it. I'm backing up a little bit and talking about my life plan, which I guess I've been talking about all along, but I became aware of it at some point that my life plan was really no plan at all. It was more of a system, and the system was take the next step. And when you do that, the step after that becomes evident. It takes a little faith, but it's a way to organize time and a way to propel me forward. Also mixed with a little bit of persistence. Let's see. Yeah, we used to, John and I and Stacy used to every morning brainstorm, what the next step would be. And Stacy was a really good organizer and a real supportive force. Let's see. So one thing that John and I worked out together, and he really enabled me to do this, was come up with some tools that enable us, and I mentioned that earlier, to expedite the process of putting these together. And one tool we came up with was a roller press, which was two wheels. You could put the pieces through, and they'd start the formation of them, so I didn't have to do all the pounding. Pounding was pretty laborious, and cutting things out with tin snips left bruises on your and calluses on your hands. And so we got on to using a plasma cutter, which is a torch that will, cut the metal out really quickly. I'd make forms out of masonite so I could follow it with the torch. And this was, extremely helpful. We also came out with this roller press. We were able to do strips, and they then twist them into forms. And I think there was another video. I hope I haven't passed it up, but I think this would be a good time to show that. It was the video of cups and strips. Do you know which one that was, Scott?
Mechanical innovation.
Yeah, mechanical innovation.
Okay. So did we skip over the one that showed all your pieces moving?
That's the one.
That's the one? Okay. Yep.
That
All right.
is the one.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. This is the double dancer. This is interesting. I started with a single piece and then doubled it up. In other words, I had just a single on this one, and then I added another level. Now, this is a good example of the strips. And here's another example of what we could do with rolled strips. And here's another one. And yet another one. So this opened up a whole series. We called it the Millennium Series. This is one of my favorite. I named my daughter after, I call it a Mirinda. This also we had developed a little technique for, mounting bearings so you could have some counter rotation. And these two pieces, that little innovation helped us. And also this one had three counter rotating pieces, which I guess is evident in this piece. Oh, and this one was the Gemini. That's a fairly recent piece. Also, this is done in stainless steel. That has its whole set of issues. This is, I think, called the Supernova. And it has a little counter-rotating element to it. It's a really difficult piece to put together. And these are all quite recent pieces. Wave. I like that wave because those two pieces work together. So, well, I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did. I'm often asked, or sometimes asked, how I come up with an exhibit for like arboretums or public spaces. And I used to, when it first happened, I was really thrilled to be able to have something in a public space. So I took the actual pieces and would set them up and did full-scale modeling, maybe 6 or 8 pieces, but it ended up being really time-consuming and a lot of work. So I got one commission that was fairly large, and I thought this isn't practical to do 20 or 30 pieces. So I cut out little paper things. I had a picture of the piece and tried to arrange them so I get an idea of height and depth. But that was really cumbersome. And then after that, I joined the electronic age. There was a guy that was working with us, Joe Heaton, who was really good with computers, and we got a program so we could have a photograph sent of what the space looked like, and then a plot so we knew the spacing. And that really allowed, me to do these larger commissions. So that was another step forward. So my brother's process and computers really allowed the transition to happen as well. So my wife, I think we're just ready for another video. This, just a little explanation for this. My wife, her voice is in this next video, and this shows the process of working through a public commission. And there's a little marketing element to this also, which will become evident. So that one is the last video.
No,
Isn't that?
there's one more.
Oh, there is one more? Oh, yep, there is. Sorry about that. So have you got this one, Scott, the process of how I approach commissions?
Why wind sculptures? A private or public commission creates a connection to your home, your neighborhood, town, or city. An artistic installation is a unifying force bringing forth beauty. Wind sculptures have an inherent ability to connect the viewer to their surroundings and nature. The silent motion of Lyman's wind sculptures draws you into the elemental forces of the earth and brings forth a sense of tranquility and delight. How to begin? Once you've established a potential location, such as an intimate courtyard, an entrance to a building, a public park, a town square, or the gateway to a city, the Whitaker Studio team will help you conceptualize how wind sculptures can transform your space, bringing life, energy, excitement, and beauty. Artist involvement. Inspiration from photographs or on-site visits allows Lyman to brainstorm thematic directions for the installation, bringing together elements such as architecture, environment, flow, or use of space. These ideas come to life in physical form through computer or full-scale modeling in miniature, allowing for viewing at any angle or perspective. Once the concept is approved by you, the Whitaker Studio team will develop a full proposal. Installation. For smaller scale installations, your wind sculptures are hand-built and delivered to your site. We provide detailed instructions that are simple for your contractor or landscaper to follow. Without much disruption, your display is soon dancing to the rhythms of nature. For large-scale public projects, the studio arranges the detailed logistics of packing and shipping your hand-built sculptures by semi-truck for delivery to the installation site. A trained team is available for full-service installation. To get started on transforming your public or private space, please contact the studio.
Well, am I back? Back on course? With the help of my wife and my brother, we've created a success that was really beyond anything that I ever had projected. It seems to me like it just happened, and it still doesn't feel like it happened. It's, but at any rate, we have them on really every continent except Antarctica, and that gives me a chance to take a little segue into a job I had down at the bottom of the earth for a period 6 months. I, as a child, have been fascinated by that white stuff at the bottom of the globe or the map. And so one day I had a chance with somebody that I had done a project with that was had the contract for Antarctica. So I said, Earl, get me a job down there. And this was one of the most interesting chapters of my life. The only reason I bring that up is I was always looking for a way to incorporate my art into wherever I was or what I was doing. And I got, they needed a sign made for the South Pole station. And so I got the job. I cut out letters out of wood, and that gave me a chance to get a trip to the South Pole. And there, it was pretty loose there. You could do quite a bit what you want. So I did an unofficial project that was art project. Since I used to work with clocks, making mobiles out of them, I had a sort of a time theme. So I thought this is an ideal place for a sundial. You know, being on the bottom of the earth, your pole is straight up. And so I gathered some stuff from the carpenter shop and got a pole at 25 feet in the air and cut out large letters or numbers and got a transit and arranged them around into the angles of a clock. And it was a really fun project. I figure it was a clock with one moving part. The only problem is there's only 2 days in that part of the world. There's a night and then a day, and the night is 6 months long and the day is 6 months long. So it only works half a year. I think this brings us pretty much to the end. But I do want to thank you for indulging me in my little Antarctic story. And also, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to challenge one of my most basic fears. So it's been a joy being with you. And I think we'll skip that last video since it was somewhat shown. We had a picture of it in the last video. So the very last one you can skip of Lancaster. If there are any questions, I guess I'll attempt to answer them.
Okay, great. So very interesting. Yeah.
I would just like to say that we also discovered your pieces at the Grove Park Inn Gallery 20 some years ago, and I'm an architect, and I put 20 of them in a client's project here locally, and we ourselves have started with 3 and we now have 7.
Oh,
We love them.
We would love to, with all of that and what we donated to the garden, with about 30 of your pieces.
well, thank you.
Well, we would love to see photographs of those. There's a way to upload them to our website. So if you go to our website and submit photos,
We could upload a video of ours because they're around a big pond, and they're delightful because we see them day and night. I've got them uplit, and we see them twice. We see them in reality, and then we see them reflected in the water.
Oh,
very dramatic.
That would be so awesome. So please share
We'll
those
send you a video.
videos. That would be awesome. Thank you.
Well, here's my
You know
partner.
how to email them or to
We'll
text.
figure it out.
We'll figure out how to get it to you.
Yeah, I would have no idea how to email them if it were me.
LymanWhitaker.com, and there's a place where you can upload photos.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, and this, of course, is my partner.
that's your bride and your manager.
And my manager.
Well, we love your work.
Well, thank you.
Thank
We fell
you.
in love with it immediately and we continue to walk around our property and look for other locations to put things.
Awesome,
As
thank
well
you.
as the Hort Garden.
Oh, thank you.
Scott, are there any other questions we can address?
There are a few questions, yeah. So one of them is asking, do you do much soldering and welding, or is it mostly cold joints?
There is a lot of soldering, silver soldering to the pieces, and then there's soft soldering, and then and there is welding, as well as a few mechanical joints. They're good if you can't do any of the other. You can always do a pop rivet or bolt, and we do bolt. Yeah, there's some mechanical connections as well on the pieces. Actually, we put the pieces together any way we can.
Okay, good. When you do weld, are you stick welding, MIG welding? What kind of welding are you doing?
Tungsten arc, TIG welding is really for the real delicate ones. And then for the shafts, there's just a regular wire feed, MIG welding.
Okay, great.
So we do both of those. Stick welding, that's what I learned on, but we don't do any of that. It's more for skyscrapers these days.
Right. So somebody else asked, do you study wind aerodynamics when you're designing your sculptures?
We have, on occasion, we built a primitive air tunnel, put a big fan in a cardboard box, made a tunnel out of it. So we've done a little bit, but that was more after the fact to see which ones responded. And the tulip and desert flame, there was one that responded quite well. Most of the wind sculptures operated on a principle where one side is more aerodynamic and the other side is the cup. So as the wind blows, it pulls it through. So there's a natural kind of braking mechanism. That was what keeps them from going crazy and really high winds. So I'm familiar with what's going on. But some of them, it's total mystery. I mean, the wind is, like we have the double spinner that doesn't have any way of directing it in the wind, but it still turns, and so some of it's a mystery, and I do have a somewhat of an understanding of what's going on.
Okay, great. Somebody else asked, does your process change when you're working with stainless versus the copper?
Oh, yes. All your tools, first of all, get dull, your punches, and it's a lot harder. Yeah, it's a lot harder to work. The people that I work with, that work with me, hate it. They don't like it very well, but I like it. It's really, it has a really, the thing I like about stainless is that the light flows over the surface, and that makes for an interesting effect.
Okay.
Oh, also with stainless, one thing that you can do is, though, you can spot weld, which gives a real clean, kind of not invisible, but it's not an easily seen weld, and it's easy to do.
And you can light it at night.
Yeah. Oh, also with the stainless, another thing is they really respond well to light at night. And it doesn't take very much, but you get that light floating off the surface. And even if you want to introduce a little color to it, it's easy to do these days.
Okay, and then it seems like the last questions are about patina. So one is asking what your process is to patina them. And then another one says the turquoise patina has faded. How can they restore it to look like it was when they purchased it?
Let's see. The first question is, I think that they're just some patinas I learned basically in college, and I've kind of used those ever since. We apply them and keep them in a moist environment for 24 hours. So we have a booth where we spray them down with. It's, copper is a really reactive metal, and it's pretty hard to control what it does. Eventually it likes to go green, but that also depends on the environment. We do have some patina that works. It doesn't quite restore them to the original, but it does, and it does a slightly different blue to them. But we do have that, and that can be applied with a spray bottle, and then it takes a period of time, but it starts helping them activate and helping them go towards the more verde, blue, greens.
And if anybody wants to try that, there's a place on our website that has technical assistance that they can communicate through the website to ask about that.
I mean, from my own personal opinion, it's just that you have an evolving color with them, and I just kind of accept or even enjoy the changing color. Eventually they'll start working back into the green, but if that takes a long time.
We find that dry desert environments are more likely to go to the browns and the darker colors.
Mm-hmm.
And we noticed once in North Carolina with, I think, some of the acid rain or the acidic air there from the manufacturing, that the patinas stay really green. So it really does depend a lot on the environment.
Which is, it's hard to control that. But, for me, they're more about the shape than they are, the color. I find that the color really, a patina is really pleasing. But
we're looking out this direction because we're looking out at our sculpture garden at our house.
Yeah, and these are really old ones, and they still look pretty good. So that spray you can apply after, helps. But again, that takes weeks and months for it to, start to work into it. So I hope that answered some of your question.
Yeah,
Now,
I think that,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that addressed it. So they can always check your website for more information. And so somebody posted a link in the chat box for your website. So that's there. And that looks like all the questions for now. So again, thank you very much for taking the time to do this. We love the pieces that Warren and Margie donated, and we're happy to have you as a part of our garden. If you're ever in Virginia, you got to come visit us now.
Good idea. And since we're not quite to an hour, if you want to end with that Lancaster video, that was the largest commission we've done to date. It took over a year to plan it, and Lyman and his brother were on site for over a month.
Yeah, it was, I hate to say it was a nightmare project because there were 5 bureaucratic entities and thousands of emails just circulating back and forth, and everybody having a concern.
So and then if people want to peel off, they can, but you might as well show that last video.
Oh, one of the concerns was lightning. I won't go into that one.
Okay, great. Well, I'll hit play on the video, and we'll thank everybody for attending.
Well, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Oh, she got cut off. Well, I survived it.
It's the process. The finished thing is something that guides you, but it's the process where the real joy comes. Same with life. That's all you have is the process. I really never had a job. I think my record is 6 months with a paycheck. I always worked and saved money, and all I ever want to do is buy time to do artwork. Nothing I set out to do, but it seems to be where my drives took me.
There's something that's really nice about building something physical, where if you have a job that involves paper only, the only thing that happens is the stack gets thicker.
They just have a calming effect. There's so much in this world ratchets you up. Everything is designed to stimulate. These create a more tranquil environment. Wind is very complex in the way it moves. It dances around the pieces and you get a feeling of the personality of the wind. It transforms the wind from an annoyance to an attractive natural force.
We have some very, very special guests here today.
The gateway piece is really important because it sets the tone for the whole community.
And vibrant community.
They know they're into a community where art has a dominance and an importance. As an artist, I would say this was the peak of my career.
All right, so that was that final video. So thanks again to everybody for logging in. We do have another talk coming on February 10th about photography. So if you're interested in that, please check our website for more details. Thank you very much. Thanks, Lyman.